Ever feel like the minute, like the very minute you finalize a project plan,
Yeah.
something always changes.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. Throws the whole thing into disarray.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
Change. It's like the one constant in any project.
It really is.
But good news is, with the right strategies, you can use those curveballs. You can make them win. You know,
Absolutely.
turn them into wins.
Total.
No matter what you're doing.
Yeah. It's all about strategy.
Today's deep dive, we are looking at PR10 Manage project changes.
Oh, good one.
And trust me, it's way more exciting than it might sound. Think of it like a
roadmap.
roadmap, yeah,
Oh, that.
for navigating those inevitable project shifts.
Because they're coming. It's not even if, it's when. So you might as well be prepared, right?
Exactly. Instead of kind of fearing those changes, let's talk about how to make them work for us.
Yes.
The source really emphasizes this idea of shifting our mindset
Oh, I love that.
from change being like the enemy to change being an opportunity. What are your thoughts?
It's funny because like our brains, I think, are almost hardwired to resist change a little bit.
It feels risky.
It does. It feels risky. Right. But in a project, I think clinging to this like rigid plan when everything around you is changing actually leads to bigger problems. So if you can like shift your mindset from the beginning and be a little bit more, I don't know, like flexible and open, it makes such a difference.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Being too rigid can really backfire.
Big time.
The source mentions this thing, change-friendly culture. What does that actually what does that even mean in practice?
Yeah. So I always think about it like, imagine a construction project, right?
Okay.
And in the middle of it, all of a sudden, there are all these new building codes introduced.
Oh, no.
Total chaos, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have cultivated this change-friendly environment.
So, like, how does a construction team become change-friendly? Because it's not like they can predict every single thing.
Right. No, you're right. You can't foresee everything, but you can build in that flexibility, from the start.
Okay.
So they would consult maybe legal experts throughout the whole design phase. Maybe they're staying updated on industry trends, reading articles, going to conferences.
Yeah.
Maybe they even add a little buffer in the schedule just in case.
So they're like building in these cushions into that project plan.
Exactly.
For those just-in-case moments.
Exactly. And this applies to all sorts of projects, not just, building a skyscraper. But let's say, like, you're developing software.
Yeah.
And a client's like, oh, at the last minute, can you just add this one feature?
Ugh, the worst.
Right. A change-friendly team, they will have already, discussed those potential scope adjustments, and they have a system for evaluating the impact.
That's huge. That's huge. Anticipating those changes is definitely a good start, but it does feel like it's only half the battle.
Yeah.
So let's talk about building a solid game plan for when those changes inevitably arise. What are some of the key steps involved?
So it all kind of boils down to having this really strong, robust, what's called a change control process.
Okay.
Which is really just like a clear roadmap for navigating the choppy waters of change.
I'm ready for the roadmap breakdown here.
Okay.
What's the first stop?
First things first, right? Identify the change.
Okay.
What needs adjusting? Then you have to evaluate its potential impact. So will it affect the project scope? Will it affect the budget? Will it affect the timeline?
It's like those domino effects.
Yeah.
Like one change just impacts everything else.
It's like a ripple effect. One change can impact various aspects.
Totally. So we've assessed those ripple effects. Then what?
And this is where the magic happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where we decide, are we going to go for it or not? Do we approve this change or is it a no-go? And this is where things get really interesting.
This is where we separate those must-haves from the nice-to-haves, those pie in the sky ideas.
Exactly. Prioritization is key.
Right. Our source mentioned the Moscow method.
Yes.
For prioritization. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So the Moscow method, it's a really cool tool for categorizing changes based on how important they really are.
Okay.
So imagine you're organizing this huge launch event.
Okay.
You've got a million things on your list that you could potentially do, but not everything can be the top priority.
Of course. Okay, so I'm picturing this launch event.
Okay.
Help me sort through the chaos here. What kind of changes fall under that must-have category?
So must-haves are the non-negotiables. They're absolutely essential for this project to even have a chance of succeeding.
Got it.
So for our launch event, this might be like, securing the venue,
Yeah.
having a website, like a functional website.
Right.
Maybe like booking that amazing keynote speaker that everyone's like super pumped about.
Yeah, those are like foundational elements,
Yeah.
the things you can't launch without.
Exactly.
Okay. What about should have?
Should have. These are still important, but they're not like mission critical.
Okay.
So they add value, but like the project's not going to completely like fall apart if you don't have them. So, thinking about our launch event, maybe this is like extra decorations.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like a post-event survey that you send out to attendees.
Yeah.
Just like those enhancements,
Yeah. Okay, so then we've got the could haves. So those are like the extras, right? Those are like the fun things.
The could-haves are like the bonus features, right?
Yeah.
So this is like, maybe we have a photo booth at the launch event.
Fun.
Or like a social media contest to get people more involved.
I like it.
So like those are really nice to have, but like not the end of the world if, budget's a little tight or we're running out of time. Totally.
And then, of course, you've got your won't haves.
Well, so those are the things that sounded like amazing
Yeah.
at the beginning, but then as you got into it,
You're like, maybe it's not the best use of resources. You know what I mean? Maybe we thought about offering like valet parking,
okay,
but it turns out like the venue, the layout just won't accommodate it.
it's just not feasible.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And that's okay. And I think like what's really important about categorizing these is it helps everyone kind of understand why we're saying yes to some things and no to others.
Right.
And it just creates that like team alignment.
Having a system in place like that Moscow method makes those decisions, which can be really hard, so much easier, especially when you are like up against it and you have all these potential changes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gives you a framework to work with.
So we've anticipated those changes.
Yeah.
We're embracing this flexible mindset.
We're using the Moscow method to categorize them.
Yes.
What's next? How do we actually implement these changes without like completely derailing the entire project?
So this is where like meticulous documentation becomes like your absolute best friend.
Okay.
So every single change that's approved, what the potential impact is, why you even made that change, who said yes on it, all of that has to be very, very carefully recorded.
It's like keeping this very detailed logbook
Yes.
of the project, like every decision, every tweak, every change.
Yeah.
Why is that level of detail so important, especially I imagine for like larger projects?
Yeah. Transparency and accountability. Imagine like a giant software project, right?
Yeah.
Multiple teams working on it, and somebody makes a teeny tiny change to a piece of code, but they don't document it.
Oh no.
And then like weeks later, another team is working on something totally different and they encounter this weird bug. And it turns out it's because of that change that nobody knew about.
A documentation nightmare.
Exactly. So this logbook helps us like track those domino effects, right?
Right.
Keep everybody in the loop.
And this is where I think like the change control board, the CCB, comes in.
Yeah.
Our source mentioned that they play a really important role in this process.
Yeah, for sure. So the CCB, they act like the ultimate decision maker
Okay.
when it comes to change management.
Okay.
They make sure that all the changes that are being proposed, they fit with the project's goals.
Got it.
They're like the guardians of the project scope, making sure things don't get too out of control.
So they review the change, they analyze the impact,
Yeah,
and then they give it the green light or the red light.
exactly.
Right.
They provide that essential oversight to make sure that everything's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's like having that final check
Exactly.
to make sure it all aligns. This is all starting to like really click.
Good.
We've talked about the theory, but I think it'd be really helpful for our listeners to like see this in action.
Okay.
Our source mentioned the example of like an agile software development team. Can we dive into that a little bit?
Yes, totally. So let's say like this agile team, they're right in the middle of a sprint.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, bam, they discover this critical bug in the code.
Oh no.
Right? In a traditional like project management approach, this would be like a major, major setback.
Yeah, for sure.
But agile teams, they're really designed for like adaptability.
So instead of panicking, they use the tools that we're talking about
Reset.
to like spring into action. So how would they approach this particular situation?
So they'd start by like assessing the severity of the bug, right? how bad is it?
Okay.
They'd probably prioritize it using our friend, the Moscow method. And then they would figure out a way to integrate that fix into their workflow, like seamlessly. So they might pull in another developer, maybe they adjust the sprint backlog a little bit, or, worst case scenario, they might have to push back the release date a little bit, but they have a plan.
They're adjusting their sails.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like they're on a boat, a change comes, they're adjusting the sails to navigate around that storm.
I love that analogy. That's exactly it. It's about flexibility, right? And having a system to address all those curveballs because they're going to happen.
It's fascinating how those agile methodologies, they kind of embrace those changes.
Yeah.
As part of the process.
100%.
So we've talked about anticipating change.
Yes.
Strategizing for it, implementing those changes carefully. But it sounds like our deep dive isn't quite over yet.
Not quite.
We've made the change.
Yeah.
Now what? Is that it? Do we just pat ourselves on the back and move on?
It's tempting.
We've talked about anticipating change, strategizing for it, implementing those changes carefully. But it sounds like our deep dive isn't quite over yet. We've made the change.
Right.
Now, what is that? Is that it? Do we just pat ourselves on the back and move on?
Not quite. Implementing the change is a big step, but it's not the finish line. The real work often begins after the change is made.
Oh, I like where this is going to. Tell us more about this often overlooked post-change phase.
It's all about evaluation. Did the change achieve what we hoped it would? Did it solve the problem, improve the process, or did it create a whole new set of challenges?
So we're not just checking a box, we're analyzing whether the change actually moved us closer to our project goals. What does that evaluation process look like?
Think of it like a science experiment. You have a hypothesis, the desired outcome of the change, and now you need to gather data to see if your hypothesis holds true. Let's say you're managing a marketing campaign, and you decide to try a new social media strategy to increase engagement.
Okay, I'm with you. We launched the new strategy. Now we need to see if those likes and shares actually went up.
Exactly. You'd track the metrics, compare them to the previous period, and see if the change had the desired effect. Maybe engagement skyrocketed and you found winning formula, or maybe it fell flat and you need to tweak your approach.
It's about being honest with ourselves about the results, even if they weren't what we expected. What happens if a change doesn't have the desired effect? Do we just hit the undo button?
Sometimes, but often it's about analyzing what went wrong and making adjustments. Maybe that social media strategy wasn't a complete failure, but it needed some fine-tuning to resonate with the target audience.
So it's about embracing that feedback loop.
Yeah.
Implement, evaluate, adjust, and repeat this process sounds incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
But I imagine it takes discipline to see it through. It's tempting to just declare victory once a change is implemented, isn't it?
It's definitely tempting, especially when we're juggling multiple projects and deadlines. But that final evaluation step is what separates good project management from exceptional project management.
It's about committing to continuous improvement, even when it's messy, or requires us to admit we might need to change course. So to recap, we've covered anticipating change, building a strategy, implementing those changes thoughtfully, and evaluating their impact. We've covered so much ground today. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they embark on their own change management journeys?
Remember, change can feel daunting, but with the right tools and strategies, it can be a powerful driver of innovation and project success. Don't shy away from it. Lean in, embrace the process, and watch your projects flourish.
That's a fantastic note to end on. A huge thank you to you and a big thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of managing project changes. We hope you found this information valuable and are excited to continue exploring the ever-evolving landscape of project management together. Until next time.